County work session to order. First item, it says pledge of allegiance, we're not gonna do that, right?
This is the two. Work session or board meeting?
Oh, June 16th, sorry.
Continued master facilities plan discussion.
Okay, thank you.
So for the board's benefit, this topic is back to you. We're gonna be looking for some specific direction as it relates to the annex. And obviously, we've had some additional developments with regard to the county attorney's office that might actually affect some of the things that have been discussed as possible priorities. And our hope is to get to some consensus around some of these immediate things affecting the annex so that we could move into the CIP that had been presented to the board at a special work session here a couple weeks ago. Because as staff, specifically Ashley, but all of us in leadership are hoping that the board can give us some consensus or direction on the CIP so that we can build your 2027 budget around the CIP projects that you're at least willing to consider when we bring that to you on July 13th. So this is your last regular night of meetings before that first all-board budget discussion. So we asked Wold to revisit the information that had been provided to you back in March and in April. There was consensus amongst board members to take certain options off the table. Bridge Street, for example, was taken off the table. A massive addition to the courthouse was taken off the table. Moving the judicial center out to the area of the detention center was taken off the table. So we were able to refine that down. We had kind of put a placeholder for the county attorney building, but now that we are moving forward with the purchase of the Metronet building, we don't need to worry about an addition to the courthouse for that use. And it's merely just the timing of the demolition of the existing county attorney building when we're ready to do so. So the biggest issue before the board this evening is the treatment of the annex. And at one of our work sessions, there was a request made for two calculations. One being what would be the cost to put an addition on this building, but also what would be the cost of rehabbing and renovating the annex, thinking we would maintain that. And so we've got some information from Wold, but we also reached out to a company called SiteLogic. They're represented here today, to ask them to do kind of a facilities analysis, and they looked at two buildings, because the courthouse was certainly an ongoing conversation for the board, but most specifically, they sent a team through the annex to give us an assessment of the useful life of the structures that are there, more than just what a Wold's analysis would have done, which is based on square footage. So we're hopeful that the resources that we share with the board tonight will give you the information you need, where hopefully there can be consensus reached as to the future of the annex building. So Jake and Jake, or is that Jake Square? Either way, I'm gonna turn it over to you to kind of walk through the Wold PowerPoint. And then Jake and I will walk you through some of the SiteLogic information. Obviously, our SiteLogic delegates are here as well, if you wanted to talk with them about kind of their approach to assessing the useful life of the annex. So, turn it over to you guys, and do you wanna run the PowerPoint?
Sure. We'll flip to,
I need that. I'm trying to. Talk about planning.
this slide, the space program, just a quick update on there. We haven't made any changes to this. This is the same space program that we've presented at previous meetings. So this is really informing the estimated square footage for future growth that we've put the cost together for the various options today. So with that, the next slide after that's just existing site plan of the annex and GSB next to each other. We go down one more. This is kind of the first option that we were tasked with exploring, and maybe some of the SiteLogic's information can layer into this, but we were looking at kind of several different key areas of major upgrades that we were to continue investing in this building. The items listed in the spreadsheet here, first one's the boiler replacement, and this is including the full plant modernization. The bottom portion of the table here shows a lesser version of that, which would be just the boiler replacement. Keeping your piping and controls, the cost is a little less on that option, but we did include the full boiler plant modernization in the top table. tracking for deferred maintenance in this facility, would be reconstructing the parking lot. We know there's some foundation and waterproofing repairs that likely need to occur in several areas. If you're planning to reinvest in this facility for the long term. On the exterior, looking at windows and some tuck pointing on the brick. And then we know the roof is due to be replaced, and there's been some issues with water infiltration there, so assuming a little bit of a higher cost for some of the roofing insulation and possibly some of the deck that's associated with the roof. So total costs are just under $2 million construction. That's not including any interior remodeling costs, which we'll talk about in a moment. And we are applying a 1.35 project cost factor, which is pretty conservative at this point. Includes a higher contingency just until we know more about the fine details to possibly reduce that contingency. Any questions on that? The bottom table I just mentioned again, that's just the alternate version of the boiler.
Mr. Stoll, question, Jake. Reconstruction of the parking lot, is that concrete or asphalt? Projected?
I don't
It
remember.
was concrete.
So how much extra is the concrete over the asphalt, do you know?
I don't think we were, I can get you the number, I think it was around 400,000. And we did use some of the information from the recent project here, which I think we got several bids on asphalt or bituminous and concrete.
Yeah, we just took the square footage of the project here at the courthouse, and so we were close.
And we checked some other cost information that we had.
And then that $225,000 for the boiler replacement, so explain that again, you can reduce that cost how? If you don't do the piping and controls?
Yeah, so like the boiler replacement would be, you'd add controls, and, cause right now, there's really no controls, not even map controls over there. So basically, we would put in building automation, new boilers. The lower option is just the boiler replacement. If you recall, the boilers we have there, basically they discontinued, they closed the, yep, unless somebody comes in, they're in a big lawsuit, and if somebody comes and buys them up, they lock the doors and we get parts for them anymore.
Is that all copper piping in there? It's all hot water heat, cold water?
So the public house side is, it's got, 3 residential units, and then the other 2 wings are on our boiler, and
Like residential, forced air?
yes, on the,
Okay.
yep, on the public health side.
That helps me understand, thank you.
So the public health side's fine, or would that boiler take care of them too?
Yeah, I think if we did the, well, actually, we wouldn't, not in this scenario, but I think in the renovation scenario, we would include the boiler on that side. Cause if I remember right, the public health side, the oldest unit over there is 19 years old. So they're anywhere from like, I think it's 7 to 19, 2 to 3. Some of them are getting up there in age as well.
And then the new roof at $728,000, what type of roof are you proposing?
We were planning a 30-year, and it would probably be built up to what we were assuming for the pricing.
Is that correct? 30-year built up?
So, I think we kind of just talked about the placeholder there. So I got a number for like a TPO at 400,000, 300,000 to 400,000, but we also put money in there, not knowing the condition of all the insulation or what the decking is like because of all the leaking.
So you're, I don't wanna put words in your mouth, but you're saying you want a worst case, 728, that would include possibly insulation and other issues.
Right, cause I think when we created this slide, this was kind of what is our worst, what's our deferred maintenance to get us, what would we have to do to get us by for another 5 years? So, cause I think the 30-year roof would be a little bit more, especially with you not knowing what that insulation or decking is like under there.
So basically, we looked at two different scenarios, one which is just getting by us 5 to 7 years till we figure out what we wanna do, which I don't think anybody here wants to just Band-Aid. And then we said, okay, well, what if we literally went in and said, this is not about a Band-Aid, this is not about a temporary fix, if we were truly to make this a facility that has that 15 to 20 to 25-year useful life, and so that'll be another number that we show with you. But we were just looking at just maintaining status quo. And Jake's roofing contractor was up there shaking his head the whole time because he doesn't know what's underneath there. Places are squishy, I mean, it's just, he was giving a number with no guarantees, saying, I think I can keep your roof from leaking for a couple of years. And so the number here, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't send anybody up there to do a thorough cost estimate of everything. So we're giving you our best opinion of what we think it might cost without somebody having to go in there and tear up pieces of the roof and basically potentially impair its integrity even further than it already is. But we wanted round numbers, much like the estimates for building a new building are round numbers, so that the board could make some type of an informed comparison.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So I guess I don't see putting $600,000 into a parking lot as a 5-year fix. So if this is what you're saying is we're gonna do, this is our 5-year scenario to get us by for 5 years, why would we, I don't get where we're headed here.
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, on the next page, for the full redo, it's the same $600,000.
And I, just like the boilers too, the boiler replacement at lower cost. I mean, if we stay there for 5 years, we might not ever need a part, cause them boilers were put in, and this is kind of worst case scenario, right? Like, what do we need to do to get by for 5 to 7 years? And maybe it's not the full $600,000 parking lot, but at this point, we need a seal coat or something. Because there's a lot of trip hazards and the water runs towards the building. So something would have to be done.
The seal coat isn't gonna fix a trip hazard.
Or-
I'm not gonna question every line item here, but I'm just trying to understand the logic. We get projected cost of 2.5, and to Greg's point, then you flip the page, and then, okay, so if you're not willing to spend 2.5, if you're gonna start over, and now you're at 8.5. I just don't think that, I don't think the community has an appetite for it. I'm not even certain this board has an appetite for spending $8 million, so if,
On a building of that age.
well, I don't,
Again,
yeah, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, but I don't think it's gonna take $8 million to renovate that building and make it extremely useful for more than 5 years. You could put 10 million into that and go,
I think the renovation cost would be for a long-term commitment. I mean, there's a long-term, you would be staying there for 10, 20, 30 years.
do you wanna walk through the full remodel?
Sure. So the next slide, is the full remodel, so this would be renovating the whole building. Obviously, there'd be major interior renovation for the public health, programming there. We did include the reconstruction of the parking lot, which is the same number as some of the other exterior, upgrades, so to your point, Commissioner, I understand the previous slide, there's maybe a lower range that could be shared, for the urgent deferred maintenance items. But for the full remodel, it is a 30,200 square foot facility. So you break that down, it's $200 a square foot, which is, in this day and age, it's a pretty low number for renovation. And that totals for construction is $6.3 million, and again, using a conservative 35% project cost factor,
and not trying to get too schizophrenic on you, but in the materials that you have from SiteLogic, they actually did an analysis of 2 buildings. The annex is the second portion, and unfortunately, the numbers aren't paged, or aren't numbered. But if you go to the section that starts with the annex, it gets to some of the things that we've been talking about, where they literally did look at the exterior envelope, they looked at doors and windows, they looked at sites and grounds, they looked at the mechanicals. And so this merely supports the types of things that were estimated in the old report. And if you look at the very first page, it shows kind of the useful life of these various components, as well as additional information about the mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and interiors. So this was the information that we thought would be helpful to supplement the estimates for an overall reconstruct of the building. And some of this also assumes that we're gonna maintain the same footprint. And it was a dorm. It was a dorm converted for an office purpose. The footprint really doesn't work. So if we're gonna put lipstick on it, that's one thing. If we're actually gonna make this, you know, a very usable space, we're not providing any kind of information, because at this point, we haven't done the analysis to determine how would we reconfigure that space. Right now, you walk in the door and you stand in the hallway, and you have a check-in window. So every client that comes to public health has to stand in what looks like the entrance to a jail. They go through 2 metal doors that goes into a lobby space, and there's no space to separate the adult clients from the clients with children. There's a couple of exam rooms, but not nearly enough for the care that they would like to provide. You go down a series of wings and halls, and most of those offices are fairly small, and then you have a massive room with 4 people in it, where there's no privacy, no way to, so we didn't even go into that depth, because we thought for comparative purposes, building an addition versus doing a renovation, we were trying to get as close to, we're never gonna be apples to apples, but at least apples to oranges and not apples to watermelons. And so, when you look at the overall condition and the estimates that will be provided, we're hopeful that this is giving the board the information that it needs in order to assess whether or not that's the direction you wanna go, as compared to the next piece of information, which is I think where we would go next, which is coming back to putting an addition on this building.
So the next slide here. So we just added this slide. I think there were maybe some questions on where the square footages came for the 2, basically an option that we would explore in detail if the board elects to move forward, but showing an option either on the north or south side. 13,500 square foot is based on the space needs program for public health, which was 10,864 square feet. And we were using a 1.25 building net to gross factor to get to the 13,500. So the next slide here is gonna be the cost information. I think you've seen most of this information previously. This is showing the cost for the 13,500 square foot addition. Using a range $450 to $500 a square foot for the addition, and then another piece that maybe is a gray area that we could refine further, and kind of the next phase would be the renovation portion and how that building connects with some of the departments in the building here, and especially the social services department or human services, how those 2 interact. We're assuming there is some level of renovation, but probably are conservative on that at this point.
So the 10,864 square feet, that's
So
gonna get us to how many years?
That gets us, total timeline, that was a 20-year horizon we're looking at for any future space needs.
10,864.
Yep, and then looking at, that was a departmental net square footage, so applying a net to, gross factor, 1.25, assuming we need to have stairs or mechanical rooms,
For circulation.
circulation, all that is not factored into the 10,800 square feet.
And where does extension fit into this?
It does not.
Where's that for?
That's still the $10,000 question. I don't know where extension is going.
I can't hear you over there.
The question was, where does extension go? We have not even broached that subject yet.
Just the other three costs on here, started talking through the renovation cost. Again, assuming pretty conservative estimate that we'd be touching 11,500 square feet of the existing building.
But now, if we're gonna compare just apples to apples, it's the
I think that might be-
$6 million.
Yeah, you need to go one more
Next
page.
slide.
Next slide.
So just to round out the discussion on the previous one, we're including the demolition of the annex as well.
Plus other renovations on this building.
Correct. So your range there, total project cost, using the same project cost factors as we used on the other slides, is between 12 and 13.7 million. So to your point, Commissioner, looking at the comparison apples to apples, the renovation and maintenance cost that we talked about first, at 6.3 million, 8.5 project cost, and then not including any of the renovation of this building, but just simply assuming we're adding a 13,000 square foot, 500 square foot addition on either the north or south side, 6.7 million and 9.1 million project cost.
And that's at the $500 a square foot, not $450.
Yes, that's what it is. Yep, 500, so the higher end of the range that we provided, so the lower end range would have been 6 million. Construction.
The other handout, just the one pager, which is kind of an overall life assessment that SiteLogic put together, so, it tells you that they looked at 196 assets, that 146 of those are past their projected life, 70 are in an alarm or alert condition, and that nearly 75% of the assets exceed their projected life. So you've got this graphic and then this summary, just to kind of complement the analysis that Will did from just a facilities perspective. And again, if you've got questions on the SiteLogic material, I can pull up a couple more chairs. I think I got a couple of people in the audience that are happy to answer any questions that you might have about the process.
So Renee, the 70 items that were noted to be in alarm or alert condition, are they in this packet? We just got this, so I didn't have a chance to.
Susie and Jeff, you guys want to come up?
Some of them are highlighted.
Hello.
Any of the assets that you see that are listed in alarm, I don't know if they're in that packet or not, Mr. Abbey, but I do know that, when we assess it, and again, we look at total number of assets and those that are alarm alert condition, that's what we share, that help prioritize, what would be asset management moving forward. Placement and or recovery sometimes.
I understand. The question is, are those 70 listed somewhere, so I understand what those 70 items are?
Well,
or is
that's
that-
just like a summary, a highlight, but we have I don't know, can we turn on?
We have a database that can show you
database.
all that
Could you
information.
email it?
What's that?
Could you email it?
It's better if we show it to you, it's a live system, it's dynamic, and that's why it's open right now, so,
Plug in or-
So I'd love to see it, but I'm not gonna be able to absorb it all sitting here in the
Got it.
next 30 minutes, so if you
Yeah.
can email it at some point, it'd be helpful.
Yeah.
we certainly
Thank you.
could.
No, bigger questions, that just for you.
We'll see if it takes over more than that.
This should be just video, do you need audio?
No.
Rebecca, which is the input that they need to,
So to put it on the main, it would be,
The good news is the courthouse is in good condition.
Yes.
Yep.
And it really has been, a lot of things have been cared for, but similar to most public entities, they're.
There was a pretty good renovation done about 4 years ago on the courthouse.
Yeah, the courthouse is excellent, really improvements.
I think we now have control.
Okay.
Let's hope.
I like the little blue screen, right? So I look.
Doesn't ask you to change your anytime
Right.
soon.
I'm gonna come sit out here.
I can make it a little, try to make it a little bigger for you. So this is the, this just describes the annex building, and so this chart at the very bottom here, I can pop out, that describes every asset that you have in the building. And if you look here, we color coded them, those that are alarm, acceptable, so on condition. So this, that list you were referencing is all housed right here. Everything that we have the age of the asset, what the life expectancy according to ASHRAE standards is. And then we code that as far as how far it's lived beyond. So if you look at the rolled carpet there, just in the middle of the screen, 1997 install, it's 290% of its expected life. So it's about 19 years beyond its useful life. So this is a report that we can certainly generate for you so that you can have all of those specific conditions. And again, if you look, not all of them are in alarm and alert. There are a few, but there's a lot of red on this. And when we are providing and partnering with customers, we look at cost of replacement versus cost of adding or building something new, because we want to make sure that your constituents and you are given the best database you can to make those decisions. So, anything specific you want me to show you within this? Because there's lots of pieces within my site view that I could toggle back and forth to show you. If you wanted to look at just a general asset score, this is the overall Steele County. Again, we've only assessed 2 buildings, county courthouse, annex building. This dives into the systems, so you can see every asset or every system that's in the annex building. And then you can dive even deeper, so if I wanted to dig into electrical, I can go here, and it shows me all the electrical assets. So if I pick out one of the distribution panels here, it can show me, I can actually look at it on a map as to where it is, what condition it's in. It's 21 years past its expected life. But as I dig into this, it shows me exactly where that panel is located, and then I get photos of what it looks like, just for evidence, to make sure that we're doing a complete asset.
Can you go back a
Sure can.
slides where the numbers were?
Mm-hmm.
It said site and grounds are 1.
Life safety 0.
Whoops, sorry.
So what do the numbers mean?
So when we came through, I want to be clear, we did a periphery assessment. We did many of the systems, but if you look at grounds and sites here, if you want to see a quick look, all I have to do is click here. So as was discussed, the asphalt on your sidewalks and the concrete that's in your current parking lot, those are the install dates. So 2000 on the asphalt, so those are at about 26 years of life. Concrete was installed in 1982. So that tells you very quickly what gives you that score. If I want to dig deeper, I can pull up that particular package. There were 5 assessed. Out of that, the ground, actually the concrete that's in part of it, and again, I'd have to look exactly, the sidewalk must have been replaced relatively not too long ago. But, or is in good shape because it doesn't have as much traffic, obviously, as you would see a vehicle. So. If I want to go back to other systems, I can look at plumbing, same thing. I can look at what 3 assets, or I can dig in deeper. And now we did 11 assets there, and we've identified like the distribution system, I believe you were discussing, is about 34 years beyond its projected life. I wanted to take a look at that in detail. Shows me where it's at, and then it shows me here, shows me over here, what it served, but the map itself tells you where we mapped that out to. I can look at flooring, I can look at a lot of different things. This is the tool that we've been sharing with both Jake and Renee, about how to capture assets for just capital planning moving forward to kind of space that out and give you good data.
So there's carpet for when?
Hmm?
When was the carpet? How old is it?
Well, if I look at this, the rolled carpet, if I look down, I can go to age. And in the pink areas, that was installed in 1997. There is some carpet yet there from 1875. And then the blue rooms that we assessed on there are 1989.
I was working in the 1975.
I'm not sure.
So go back to the condition, but
Mhm. So if you look at that code there, all of the flooring anyway, in these particular rooms that are tagged are listed in alarm or alert condition, with the exception of a couple of smaller spaces there that were assessed as being in question. When we do an assessment, I should just add this too, that we do two sorts of assessment. One of them is, what is the actual standard, industry standard around kind of expected life? But we also do an observed condition, because sometimes assets can be in better shape if they've been well maintained, and then they have a better condition score. Or they can be relatively new and they were not very well made, and then you end up the other direction where they could be in disrepair, even though they maybe were installed less than 10 years ago.
you can't always use the E well.
Right,
Right.
It's a guideline.
exactly.
Go back to that one list, it showed the two scores next to each other, the one,
Yep,
I think that's a good perspective to what you're saying, that it isn't just.
let me just, you're talking about the asset or the facility report?
Yes.
Yep.
I believe that's what you shared. Yeah, so see that's the asset condition and then the age.
Right. That makes sense.
So again, our hope today is that the board has enough information by consensus to give direction. Now, that direction could be, we're gonna renovate the annex, or that decision could be, we're gonna tear it down and build a new one. If the board feels that additional research is necessary, you will need to make some decisions with regard to the CIP for 27, because we do need to begin building your budget, and this is your last night of board meetings before your first full-on budget meeting. So, as staff, we just need to know what additional information you would want or need, and the timeline for doing so, because we do wanna get into the meeting in July having a pretty good idea of what could be considered capital projects. So is there an overall, are people thinking in a certain direction, are you? Thank you.
I will. That's too quick. Just got this today. I'm not gonna, you're not trying to force this, but I don't wanna be hurried into making a decision. This is a big decision. Whether it's renovate or start from scratch, but I'm not comfortable making that decision tonight and putting it on the agenda for the full board. I know that we wanna have that discussion so that we can get it incorporated into the budget, our upcoming budget, but it's just too soon. I wanna be able to look at that information a little more in depth and kind of absorb what we received here today before I can make a determination. That's just I'm one person here.
Well, I tend to agree with them. I know which way I'm leaning right now, but I would like to look at all this stuff again and digest it and figure out what I think is the best move for the taxpayers.
I got a question on, yeah, when we're looking at these both ways here, and you got, if we went with the new addition here, you got, what we're doing with the property, you got 291,000 for tearing it down, but what is the long range use of that property? Were you planning on turning it down and selling it, or what?
Personally, that would be my thought. You could try and sell it as is, or
Without tearing it down,
Yeah.
try selling without tearing it down. Forget that 290,000 there and maybe sell it for something, I don't know.
If you sold it to a private enterprise, there are funds that can be used for demolition and reconstruction. If however, the thought was that you could sell it to the city, another public entity, those, grant funds are not available. So if you're considering taking that property and making it a commercial enterprise, there could be some financial relief, it's just not eligible to us. So to your point, there are some options.
I don't see the city hanging by that. They have, governments go with new and people in business kind of work with what's out there.
We know what it's,
Just curious.
we know what it's.
Brian,
I was in commercial. I get real quick.
So what additional information do the five of you wanna do a walkthrough of that building? Do the five of you, I mean, obviously you wanna study the information that Site Logic pulled together. I don't know, I think the
this
biggest-
stuff really helped. Some of that stuff's pretty high.
So what do next steps look like, and then what would be your availability for possibly a follow-up meeting before July 13th?
Our options are to renovate or build or do nothing, is that an option or?
Well, do nothing is back to that 5 to 7 year plan, that very first slide that none of you liked, but if you just wanna buy a few more years to have a little bit more time to make a decision,
In my opinion, that's throwing good money after bad, but it's just my opinion.
well, if you're buying 5 years to eventually renovate, it's not throwing bad money at you, good money at you.
Okay, we're on different pages, because then I think the money they're throwing on it afterwards is throwing more good money after that.
Well,
The building's 5 years older than it was, it's already 70 years old, 50 years old, and it's not in good shape. The foundation is bad.
I respect that argument, but the courthouse was built 100 years ago.
Understand that the courthouse was renovated, what, 4 years ago, 5 years ago?
Yeah, we had the flood renovation,
Fortunately, we didn't pay for a lot of that. It was
there
covered.
was a renovation in the 70s. Right, I think Wool did a renovation in the 90s,
We put the new HVAC in.
and then there was the flood, there was renovation then, and we did the roof, the HVAC, parking lot.
well, and I think if the courthouse didn't have the historical component, I think the decisions you've made along the way would have been based on very, very different factors, which is, do I put this kind of money into a 50-year-old building, do I put this money into a 30-year-old building, versus something that has historical relevance, it has a lot of just historical charm. Unfortunately, a lot of that charm got covered up when they put in the suspended ceiling and a bunch of other things. But a historical courthouse and a former dorm on an orphanage site probably aren't the two things that you can necessarily compare and say it's worth putting another, however many thousands of dollars into a structure that may only get another 20 years, where I think the courthouse is probably built for at least another 200 to 300. You just simply look at the thickness of the walls and the construction that's there. We just know that the annex foundation is crumbling, we know that there are multiple water intrusions, and so I think that's the fear I have, I can't speak for the staff, is that I won't know what we're dealing with until we start pulling the walls out. But we're not gonna pull the walls out without knowing which direction we're gonna go.
I guess I disagree, because it depends on the bones of that building. I'd like to I'll take you up on that offer, I'd like to do a walkthrough, but I wanna see the foundation. It's a brick structure. The last building that we built, community corrections, you know, everybody wanted brick on it, now we have not a beautiful, but we have a brick building. We're talking about tearing it down and completely abandoning the idea of a renovation. I'm not so sold on the fact that that can't be renovated. Depending on how it's built, you know, are those all bearing walls in the middle, or, you know, there's a lot of variables that go into a renovation. So I think we shouldn't discount renovating that building until we have a full picture of what we're dealing with. So I would love to have a tour of that building at some point, if we can do that sooner than later.
So hearing a tour, what additional information would you like?
I don't need additional information until I get a chance to look at this closer.
So St. Logic's info, a tour, anything else?
That one question, that, or if you put a new addition on this building here, there's no, you got the cost for the building, 500 square foot, but, there's no, we're just using the parking that we have, there's no additional parking anywhere.
For the.
We're just using the
CSD.
parking we got.
Yeah. We would do an analysis, but the parking would probably be adequate.
Anyway,
Yeah.
okay.
That's a good question. I
I
don't know.
was curious, cause you know, you're bringing all those people over here, but we're losing that whole parking lot over there, so.
Are we sure there's enough parking? I've been in
I
that
think it
parking
would
lot,
be
it's been pretty
excluded.
full.
Yeah, so that cost back, that $500 would include, like, your civil.
Yeah, if we wanted to
Portion.
expand a small parking lot, that would be included some of the site work.
But we'll verify.
The last point that I think the board should consider, but I don't know what resources we would look to, and if anyone has some ideas. Part of the analysis to even put an addition on was largely driven by the fact that we want human services and the public health department to work collaboratively and cooperatively when it comes to delivery of service. And that's the reason why we even threw the Bridge Street property out, was because we wanted those services to be co-located. And so I don't know how you evaluate or assess the disadvantage to the client that currently exists in the fact that they have to move back and forth between the two buildings. They're literally getting in their cars and driving because it's too far to walk for many of them. So I'm not too sure if there is a resource that can look at the functionality or the benefits gained. I don't know that there's a dollar amount that can be put on that, but I would ask that the board seriously consider, if the dollars are reasonably close, that you at least weigh in the benefit to the clients and the goals that we are hoping to achieve by having greater alignment of those services and location. And the ability to do that soft handoff is something that has been brought up repeatedly, that we currently don't have the ability to do. And I don't know if, you know, I know there's studies and whatnot that talk about that, but I don't know that I can lay my hands on it easily. So I would just plant that thought and ask that you consider that as you look at the numbers.
Well, again, efficiencies of staff, being able to work back and forth. I don't know if we would embed any human services people in public health from there to there, if that's the direction we went, or, you know.
I feel like we had that discussion, that was the idea that we were gonna do that some, so, to address that exact concern.
But we're now dividing as opposed to having them literally a hallway down. So I would just ask if you would just take notice of that concept as you're considering and weighing in which is the more cost-effective of the two options when it comes to service delivery, because I do think there's a value to that. So what I'm hearing is a tour, and
What would be the earliest date on the tour?
Whatever works for you guys.
Hmm?
Whatever works for you guys, you can make it work.
After I read into that?
says be noticed, it can be notice time. I mean, it can be an agenda item.
If you wanna amend your agenda for your regular board meeting to include a tour of the property
Well,
across
I'm
the
just
street.
trying to get something done before the 13th.
Well, I think right now we're probably looking at another special meeting prior to the 13th, because Ashley and her team need time.
I understand that, but we gotta get the tour in before that.
Yeah. So I'm looking at two possible dates, is there any calendars, please?
Thursday, it's Thursday. Late afternoon, mid to late afternoon.
On that,
Thursday?
that's not, do we have to notice that?
Yes.
It's a special meeting, 3 days.
3 days.
Although, Rob, what is the exception? If no official action is being taken, it's a notice of possible quorum.
I gotta look into that. We can also adjourn the meeting, or table the meeting tonight.
Continue it
Continue it.
to a date certain.
Certain, we'll probably be invited, so,
I'll just continue this meeting.
yes.
Next Monday? 29th?
It'd have to be late afternoon for the 29th. So I need you at the Metronet building.
Late afternoon, 4 o'clock? 4 o'clock? Monday the 29th?
And then as far as a special board meeting,
Right after.
that work for everybody? You stay?
Well, we'll continue this meeting.
Well, no, my preference would be to postpone.
Oh, okay.
Because if we're gonna have it next Monday, we'll have plenty of time to notice it. So it'll have a tour and then a meeting back here, unless you want to use one of the rooms over there. Okay, we'll work on logistics. And then Ashley, that gives you a little over a week. Can you just leave placeholders in some of your stuff?
Absolutely, I'll do my
Okay.
best. If there's any indication on any of the other areas besides the annex and the admin building, that you'd be wanting to give me an inclination on, I could at least start entering some of the data in for some of those other locations, such as the Alexander, Four Seasons, the courthouse.
Yeah, I think you still need to go back to the CIP. So I think for purposes of the facilities master plan, I started doing just kind of a summary sheet with some placeholders. Again, this is merely a work paper towards what I would hope to be more of a longer range 20 to 40 year chart, so that the board would have something to refer to year over year with CIP. We would layer in the facilities condition information, which is still in development. So just letting you know that we're looking comprehensively across all of the items. So knowing that we need more information to make the decision about the annex versus an addition. I think the rest of the other facilities can just wait until your next facilities conversation, if you're okay with that. And Mr. Chair, if you're okay with us sort of wrapping up the facilities conversation and moving into the CIP, we do want the board to take a little bit of time yet as part of the work session. We can continue it into the regular board meeting, but to go back through the CIP items that were presented to the board at your last, special meeting. And thank you to all of you. We'll be in touch for the additional information. Just to walk through, are there items on this list that you're willing to consider for the 2027 budget? And I don't know, Ashley, if you wanna step up, but we're starting first with the admin building. We've got the hot water pump VFDs, which is planned for the 28th. The only thing that was planned for 27 potentially was the generator. Staff are recommending that the generator, a decision on the generator be deferred until you make a decision on an addition. Because if you're gonna do an addition, we would do the generator and then possibly the roof that's now planned for 28 potentially, all as one project. The Alexander building, there was additional cameras and a concrete pad. Is there at least consensus to include that moving forward with the building of the budget? Not that you're approving it yet, but that you'd be willing to consider it as part of the budget. Okay, moving on down then to the annex. I suspect that all of those items will need to be put on hold pending further discussion. The county attorney building, we did include building demo and parking lot in 27. I think we're still thinking that we might try to get that work done yet this year. So I think if we could just have a placeholder in 27 as a just in case. Buildings and maintenance, there was only one item. The snow blower broom replacement, is there consensus to consider that for budget discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Courthouse, most of this is, security upgrades, foundation, enclosing that front area, and then also replacement of windows. Is there consensus to include those items for further discussion?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Are any of those security upgrades, will they be included in that renovation of the entrance?
Yes, and if we can get grant money to cover it, we would go
Okay.
all in,
So
absolutely.
the windows wouldn't be.
No,
Yeah.
but the security part of it, because I know that's where some of the wildlife or funds would be.
And we're accounting for the 70,000 that we're,
Yes, that is listed as a possible revenue option.
okay.
Then the detention center, we've got the parking lot using concrete versus asphalt. Is there consensus to continue that on into the discussion process?
So, for me, I'm looking at the grand totals, and we have a couple of really heavy years, and then it lessens up a lot. I would like to see this balanced out more, where it's not, in 29, we had 1.6 million, in 2030, it's 1.1 million, but next year we're proposing 7.5 million. Is there a way to kind of balance this, so it's not all a big hit in 1 year, does that not make sense?
I think for right now, we'd like to at least get consensus around the things that have been proposed. For example, the fairgrounds, that 2 million is coming out of highway reserves, not fund balance and not levy. So once we know what projects you're at least willing to discuss further, and then we can identify the funding source, I think the board will be in a better position to say, that's too great a hit on the levy, or that's too great a hit on the fund balance, and then we'll look at useful life to determine, do we build it into year 2, knowing that we might have to push some stuff out further. So I think if there's anything that's just a flat out no, that's kind of what I'm hoping to get out of the board tonight, if that's at all possible.
And if I may, I think knowing us, knowing and understanding that will help us to better be able to balance out the years as well. In addition, I think we're really working with the different teams, as we go through this process to start creating that longer term plan. So I think we will start seeing things balance out, throughout the years as we work more to refine it, which again, the master facility plan will also contribute to that, I think, as well. So I think there's just some unknowns that make it look a little wonky in the long term, but right now, for 2027.
Does it make sense to do half that parking lot this year and half next year?
It's a possibility, I mean, it's an option.
It's double the mold costs, plus increased cost of materials for that second year.
Maybe it was a bit that way.
Yeah, I mean, you got kind of that parking lot, you kind of got 3 separate parking lots. You got employee parking lot, and then you got like the work release parking lot, which is on the north side, and then kind of the, visitor parking lot.
You do it over 3 years, it'd be 600 roughly. Those 3.
To me, it's easier if I know the overall levy impact, and then we start looking at refining this.
Commissioner Abby, if you look at the bottom of page 4, I have the proposed funding source totals. It kind of breaks out what the levy impact is, the general fund impact for 2027. So in staying somewhat consistent with the prior year's levy, we've been around about 2.5 million for the levy for these CIP, and again, this year, we currently, the way that it's written, depending on if we stick to exactly this, would maintain that 2,495,500 for a levy impact with a reserve fund balance use of about 2.9. And then there are some additional funding sources that are minimal, so it's on the bottom of that page 4 in the blue.
Where does the annex fit in there?
The annex building would be a levy, the 850 is a levy impact. Should you decide to do something different, of course, that would reduce that levy amount, if you decide to.
So So that's included in that basic 2.5 million?
Yes.
sir. So if you took out the annex and did absolutely nothing, then your levy would automatically drop to about 1.6 or whatever. And then I would just recommend that you might do around a 2 million and reduce the impact to your reserves, considering, depending on the choices you make to move forward with the annex, going forward. So, I think we have some different options.
So that's the breakdown in how we fund the capital items.
Currently,
So
yes.
what's our overall then?
We won't know
We
that.
won't
That's
know
what I
that
would say,
until the
I'm wondering if
13th.
we know, it's gonna be easier to do.
Yeah. And
To
we're not
land on
even
these-
supposed to give you that.
Right, so if you're asking us to decide on this tonight, without knowing the overall levy impact, it's hard to.
I
Our,
think
our goal is not to approve these projects, but to let us know if there are things that are simply off the table. Because what we will do with this information now is build it into our overall budget assumptions for 27, and then present the board with that composite picture. Even come July 13th, we probably won't have a human services budget complete yet, but we'll probably have a placeholder for that. We know that this is a first attempt. The department hasn't been very conservative, but I'm not too sure that I'm gonna even be able to give you a levy impact number even on July 13th. More realistically would be your August meeting. But again, if there was anything on this list that you're like, it is completely off the table, it is not an option, then we would pull that out and not build it into our
We
assumptions.
should be able to put a placeholder in though for payroll and benefits increases, with the exception of health insurance. Because we know what the COLA is and all of that stuff, right, for 27?
we will be bringing to you, all of that, somewhat of a proposed, and you will have a ballpark, a very rough ballpark figure on your levy, so long as we know, like, when they say, do you want these in there or do you not, and that will help us get closer to that, but yes, Commissioner Krieger, it will have the salaries and payroll, and we will have a placeholder for, the human health services, not completely built out, but a placeholder based on those, salaries, estimates, and projections. We will also have, for you, the different, budget proposals for the different departments, just to give you a good idea of what their requests are. And again, similar to this, to identify if there's things that you really want to see removed or not, or at least start working towards refining that and identifying what the total levy is.
So, an example, metal siding, we're talking 350,000 in 2027 on the Four Seasons. That, to me, seems like something that we don't have to do, and depending on what an overall levy looks like. Even though we're projecting to take 406,000 from reserves, it's still money. I would say that would be one that I'm not in favor of, but I can't say that for certain until I know what the overall levy impact is gonna be.
Well, I feel like the annexes should be a priority, right? But I mean, we gotta figure that out.
No, not until we make a decision on it.
Well, I know, but
I guess, for me, right now, I would pull that out of the calculations preliminary.
The annex.
Yeah.
Well, what I would ask is between now and next Monday, if you would go through the list of items and at least identify the things that would be on your, I'd be willing to cut list. If there's anything that's an absolute no, I just don't feel that that's something we should be giving priority to, if you would highlight that and then bring that information with you to that meeting, then we can factor that in. And I hear what you're saying, which is, I'm not asking for you to commit to any of these 100% because we need to know what the larger levy impact is. But if there were things that are just simply not on the table, we wanted to hear that from the board. So if you would do as your homework between now and next Monday to go through that list, and then maybe highlight those things that you think could be delayed or deferred, or things that you might want additional information on. And then we can continue the work that we're doing to build the operating budget, which is the piece that Ashley continues to work with department heads on. I think you still got another, 5-6 meetings to go. So,
I have a question on the fairgrounds parking lot. That study, is that, maybe when we talk about public works, will that decision be made this year yet, or is that?
you should have the study done by this fall, whether a decision is made as to what the final project looks like. I don't know if that will be made yet this year. Jake, do you have any kind of sense?
I would think this fall we should have, like you said, the study done. I would say soon after that, we bring it to the board for consideration at that point.
And I realize it's not a levy impact, but, I mean, I just wondered if that's something that's doable this year.
Yeah, there will be a recommendation, that's associated with the study.
Are these, all these in 27, I'm assuming they all went through all department heads, right? And are they, like, I almost feel like those should be decided by department heads, whether that's something that has to be done in 27. I don't think any of this should be off the table, and I appreciate how you laid it out based on our past practice, I guess. But just, I mean, if these are stuff that has to be done, and in their eyes has to be done, but if it can be pushed off, we should probably know that, you know what I mean?
Absolutely, thank you. Commissioner Crockwell? We did meet with the department heads, and these were the items that they brought forward and presented. And so that's why they're on there for 2027. But we also know that working with you and identifying what your priorities are important as well. So wanted to work with you guys as well. And my goal was to make it so that you guys could understand it as easily as possible. So I appreciate that feedback. If there's other ways I can present that on the bottom to make it easier for you, always welcome that as well. So thank you.
Any other direction between now and next Monday?